ESBR Boxing. We're back, myself and Paul Kelly. We're back in a special review mode this week. We are reviewing Tank Davis after witnessing the impressive victory over Frank Martin last night. Obviously, the stoppage victory in the 8th round for the WBA World Lightweight title. Paul, thank you very much for joining me. Obviously, you and I are usually in preview mode, and we had both, I believe, pricked Tank Davis by a stoppage in this fight. So we sit here cocky and cocksure with our general predictions of boxing knowledge. But we're now going to unpick, I suppose, a bit of the lightweight division, the lightweight scene. Obviously, Tank Davis there. Obviously, you've got, other names. We're going to go through a couple of names. Lomachenko will be on the list, considering, there's talk of him potentially fighting Lomachenko next. We'll talk about the other champions. You've got the likes of sort of Berencic, Shakur, Stevenson. And then we'll also touch on whether there's anyone else in the division, Paul, that you think may upset Tank Davis in the fight. And I suppose we may also touch on if you could possibly go to super lightweight at the end, where you think you could, what sort of splash you think you can make there, where we to move up. Not necessarily think we'll move up, we'll just hypothetically take a look at that. So Paul, thank you very much for joining me. And obviously, after you tell everyone how you're doing, and crow a bit in our correct predictions, we'll touch on actually the fight I think is next, first and foremost for Tank. And that's going to be Lomachenko, really. So I just want your thoughts on how you see that fight going, whether you think that fight will be next, and if it were to be next, how you see that fight going, Paul. Thank you very much.
Yeah, mate, thanks for that eloquent breakdown. Really impressed by Tank Davis. Maybe, it wasn't fighting in fifth gear for much of the first half of that fight, and then when he really got going, it looked a little rusty maybe. But, biteful, huge puncher, just when he sniffs blood, like you're not seeing the end, you're not seeing the final bell. Like, as soon as he's hurt you, you're doing well to survive the next 30 seconds, because Tank Davis is just a special fighter, as he showed again last night. All of the couple of those fights that you've mentioned there, mate, Shakur Stevenson, Lomachenko, I'd love to see them. And the one you mentioned there that we're probably looks maybe quite likely, and I hope it is, we're seeing it next, is obviously the Lomachenko one. I think there's been a lot of talk already from PBC and so on and so forth that fight will be next. And yeah, I'm all for it. I think it makes total sense for both. I think Lomachenko's coming to the end of his career. So, he'll want the biggest and best fights in the division at lightweight at 135 pounds. Tank is probably the biggest name at lightweight right now. So why not for Lomachenko? Makes sense for him. If you're Tank Davis as well, he's what, 30 and 0, I think it is now, with all those stoppages as well, and ridiculous amount of KOs. That has obviously the Ryan Garcia name and a few other good names. Frank Martin, a lot of people were fancying for that fight as well. But, nobody's name like Lomachenko. Like, look at his accomplishments. Absolutely sensational. That would be a humongous, massive win if Gervonta Davis was to fight Lomachenko. And how do I see it going? Mate, I think we kind of chatted briefly about it in our preview before last week. But you know what? I don't know whether this is a popular or potentially going against the grain prediction. I still think Lomachenko wins that. And I feel pretty brave saying that, because I know in reality Tank could switch anybody's lights out at any given moment if he landed that left hook, right hand, whatever it was, flush on the chin, just like he did with Frank Martin. Land that on anybody in the division, including Lomachenko, when you're going to sleep. So yeah, I do see that being a very tricky fight, but I'm still edging towards Lomachenko at this stage. I think Lomachenko's performance against Haney has aged quite well, considering, a lot of people actually maybe had him edge in that fight, and then he looked absolutely obliterated George Kambosos Jr. last time out. I like Lomachenko in that fight. I like Lomachenko on points, but I will say that it wouldn't surprise me if he had to get off the deck to do it, which kind of goes up against everything I've just said there, because let's be honest, if Tank knocked someone down, he probably wouldn't let them get back up again. But mate, it's a cracking fight, and I would probably change my mind quite a lot. Fan of Tank Davis in the ring, huge fan of Lomachenko as well, but I'm slightly still edging towards Loma there, mate. What about you?
I mentioned, mate. I mean, I've long been accused of being a Tank Davis super fan on the channel, and I'm prepared to accept that. I think I would edge. It was tough because I saw last night. I mean, look, he'd been out of the ring a long time, Andy Davis, over a year before he went into the ring last night, and I think there were signs of that rust as well. So for me, I think actually, if he did get Loma next, it'd be interesting to see kind of how much of that he's shaken. Because obviously Loma's not necessarily a guy who you want to fight if you're a bit rusty. He'll obviously put you through the gears. But I think I would edge heart and mind maybe towards Tank, just because what we were saying. I feel like Tank would be behind on the cards as well, and then possibly stop Lomachenko. That's what I feel would happen. I think it could even be sort of like 8+ rounds. I can see him maybe even losing kind of 5 of those. Genuinely, see him like actually being quite a way down on the cards and then coming back and stopping him. But again, if you were to sit here and tell me that Loma would outpoint him in the closest fight, I could also accept that. But I just feel like Tank's got that kind of speed as well, and that natural kind of athleticism that I think would also cause Loma problems, even though obviously Loma's an athlete as well. I feel like, Tank's got that speed, he's got that shutout power. So I'd edge slightly towards Tank by stoppage, but he'd be behind on the cards. Let's stay, Paul, though, with Ukraine. We'll come to another one of the champions, WBO lightweight champion Denis Berinchyk. Berinchyk versus Davis. Do you see that going one way? How do you see that playing out, Paul? And just give us a little summary of that, please. 2 minutes or less, Paul.
Yeah, this is another one where I wouldn't even need to talk for 30 seconds. I think I predicted Berinchyk would win that fight that last time out as an underdog. And yeah, incredible fighter. But to keep it short and sweet, mate, could see something similar to what we just saw against Frank Martin. Could see him maybe losing a couple of rounds, Tank, but ultimately he would get to Berinchyk, in my opinion. And I think he would win that fight via stoppage in the mid rounds. Personally, how do you see that one going?
Yeah, I see stoppage well. I've been Berinchyk got 9 stoppages in 19 fights, 19-20 fights, I think. So not the power that you need to actually keep Tank off you. I think Tank actually would be, not rather than, I said before about being off the bit down the cards against Lomachenko, I think he'd be ahead of the cards. I think he'd have far too much for Berinchyk, frankly. I think he'd overwhelm him and stop him somewhere around 6-7 as well. But the last name, Paul, I want to mention in the lightweight division is a man that you're a big fan of. I know you're a big fan of this guy. We've talked about him on the channel before in previews. Shakur Stevenson, Paul. Now, Shakur Stevenson and Tank have obviously had, back and forths on social media and various things. People have been kind of circling each other for a little while. Names have been mentioned. If that fight were to be made, Paul, at this stage of both their careers, how do you see it going?
I don't want to come on here and how much I do like Tank Davis, and I think he's a superb fighter. But I almost feel bad because I think he would get beat by Shakur Stevenson. There's something about Shakur Stevenson where I'm just like, you're elite. I know Tank Davis is as well, but I really do think Shakur could be the number one in this division. I think Shakur could actually perhaps beat every single fighter on the planet at 135 pounds. I think he's that good. Not a massive puncher, Shakur, but has shown signs of punching a little bit harder now since moving up to lightweight of late. I'm backing Shakur Stevenson to win that on points. I think he would frustrate Gervonta Davis. Would obviously have to answer a few questions and probably have the chin checked a little. But yeah, I mean, it's another cracking fight, and I do feel bad going against Tank because I have Tank. I have Tank, Shakur Stevenson, and Loma as the top 3 in the division, and it just so happens that I really rate Loma really highly still, and I just think Shakur Stevenson's better than everybody else personally. So I'm still edging towards Shakur, but mate, just hope we get that fight. Come on, I would absolutely love to see that fight. It would be absolutely amazing. How do you see that going out? I can see you're seething there at me going against Gervonta Davis.
No, you know what I Davis would work and win. He's going to have to be on his game for 12 rounds because he's not going to stop Tank, obviously. So he's going to win on points. Could Tank stop him? Yes, but you can see a world also where Shakur Stevenson frustrates Tank Davis and wins on points. And I probably lean actually towards that at this stage, which is weird considering all you need is one touch and that could be the end of that fight. So I'll lean possibly towards Shakur Stevenson, but it'd be literally sort of breaking my heart, sort of 50. Paul, that is sadly all we've got time for. We were potentially going to touch on the super lightweight, but we don't need to do that, Paul, because we've talked about super lightweights when we talked about Liam Power in other videos. So guys, check that out. Paul, thank you very much for joining me. Check out the channel again. With obviously we've got interviews, reviews, previews, big fight breakdowns, all that good stuff. Like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think about Tank Davis. I've seen him kind of divide Twitter. Some people say, he's fantastic, pound for pound champion. Other people have said he's not beating anyone that hasn't worked him at 20+ years. I started taking up boxing when they were 35. So let us know what you think really about Tank Davis and where he can go. As always, thank you very much, guys, for watching. But as always, I'd like to thank you, Paul, for joining me. Check out the rest of the stuff of the channel for things that are upcoming.
Top man, cheers, and thanks guys for watching.